So I've just got back from my friend's house and I actually just got a haircut while I was at his place. And although he didn't really do a good job in terms of cutting my hair, and I'm not really a big fan of the haircut that he gave me, it is what it is. I mean, I can't go to my favorite hair salon right now because we are in a pandemic, and I'll probably won't be able to go there at least till middle of July, after SF a couple of days ago just outlined exactly how are they going to reopen, and they said that hair salon and movie theater probably will not be reopening at the earliest until July. So yeah, there's really nothing I can do about it, and that, really, in terms of cutting my hair, there's really only two options: either just stuck with long hair as I have got the last couple of days, or just finally go to my friend's house and let him just kind of cut my hair. And I decided to choose the second option because the first option of having long hair, it started to become very uncomfortable for the past couple of weeks. But that being said, let us actually now get into the news of the week, since there were some big news that came out of MLS, but none other than the bigger news that I want to just get straight off the bat to talk about, and that of course is the whole Black Lives Matter protest and the whole situation with George Floyd being killed in Minneapolis by a white police officer. Obviously, it has triggered a lot of anger, so much anger that it seemed like everywhere in the country is protesting, and that it feels like the country is in flames right now. And all I'll say about this is that I'm not really going to go too deep into this issue, and that I'm not going to choose sides whatsoever. But all I'll say is just be safe out there, and if you decided to join the protest, then go right ahead, but just do it as peacefully as possible, because I know right now, as I've seen on the news, there is a lot of riot and a lot of looting that is going on, and it just gets to a point where I thought that's not really protesting. And when you're basically just go to a local Target store and decide to loot everything from there. I mean, yeah, it's a very ugly scene, and as I said, just be safe out there. And if you're going to protest, then you can go right ahead, but try to do it as peacefully as possible. And that, if you're also a person like me that is not gonna go protest and not going to involve in this fight, my suggestion is just don't go to the city, or just don't go outside of an area where there is a protest going on, because I've seen in the news where there's many people driving down the street, they get caught in the middle of this protest, and it is a no man's land situation that they are in. Like, they are being friend with all these protesters that could potentially vandalize their car, and there's also a situation where there's really nothing they can do. I mean, they can't just decide to shove people out of the way, or worse, just trying to run people out of the way, because if you decide to run people out of the way, then that is a crime of a hit and run. So yeah, to avoid that, try not to go to the city or go to any areas that you think that there's a protest around, because the last thing you need to do in this situation that we're in is just getting caught into the middle of these very hostile protests that is going on. Now, moving away in terms of the whole Black Lives Matter protest and the whole justice for George Floyd, we got another update in terms of MLS potentially returning to Orlando. And actually, the Player Association a couple of days ago submit a new return to play proposal to the owners and the league. And this new proposal that the MLS PA basically voted in to send it to the owners and the league is that instead of actually having 5 group games that is going to be kind of like the group match of these tournaments, there's actually going to be just 3 games, and then they have their knockout stage, and that they're going to be there only for 2 weeks for training in Orlando before they actually start the tournament. And they're actually going to be starting their training in June 22nd instead of June 1st when the original proposal was. And they also said that no teams will be in Orlando for more than 6 weeks, and after, if a team gets eliminated, whether it's in the knockout stage or in the group stage, then they are going to be returning to their home market. Now, It's a very kind of World Cup style of proposal that they put. Oh, the most important thing that they also mentioned in that return to play proposal by the MLS PA is that they're going to say that they want a 7.5% pay cut instead of the original 20% pay cut that the original proposal was put in place. And they also want to change some minor details in terms of the current CBA that we are in. So yeah, we shall see whether or not if that is going to be approved by the owners and the league, and if there is any news regard on if this proposal goes through, then I will immediately bring it to that, and I'll make a single video just kind of highlight all the things that is going to happen to the road of MLS potentially restarting their season and have this little mini tournament going on in Orlando. Now, MLS have also announced that they are going to allow teams to beginning the voluntary small group training session, or as I would call it, stage 2 in terms of the road to get the MLS season restart. So now teams are allowed to have a small amount of group train each other in their training facility. And I know there's 2 teams that have immediately allowed their players to do small group training. I know Atlanta and Sporting KC have been allowed to do that. So we shall see whether or not if more club is going to do, because keep in mind, despite the fact that we have pretty much every single club that has entered stage 1 of this whole restarting plan, which include DC United and Chicago Fire as 2 of the free teams that I mentioned a couple of days ago that did not start stage 1 in terms of the restart of this whole plan of MLS restarting. Of course, they have now allowed players to do that and have entered stage 1 to allow their players to return training ground for a voluntary individual workout, which, by the way, that only leaves one more team that hasn't done that, and that only team is none other than the San Jose Earthquakes. And although at times when I always kind of moan about how, oh my goodness, the Quakes are doing something that not everybody is doing, and usually it's not a good thing. For me, I don't mind the fact that the Quakes are not allowing their players to enter stage 1 and allow them to have voluntary individual workout, because as I said, Santa Clara County is very strict about this whole shelter in place, probably the most strictest in the country in terms of this whole shelter in place. And unless if the Quakes get the authority of the county for them to allow to do that and allow their players to do voluntary individual workout, they really can't do anything whatsoever. So while I know Quakes fans are frustrated the fact that every single team already have players back into training, and that this might put a little bit disadvantage for the Quakes, and how most of these players possibly they might not actually get to see any training or any voluntary individual workout until when they arrive in Orlando. It is what it is. I mean, there's really nothing the team can do, and that the team are just trying to take every precaution so that they make sure that they feel like it is the right time for them to potentially heading into what pretty much every single team are in right now, which is heading into stage 1 and allowing their players to do voluntary individual workout. Now, staying with news that involved with the Quakes, and there were definitely a couple of news that involved with the Quakes these last couple of days, and not really in a good reason. Quakes assistant head coach Benjamin Gallardo have rushed to the hospital after suffering a stroke in Guadalajara, and he actually went into intensive care and actually had an emergency brain surgery to trying to stabilize him. And the last time I heard about this, or the last thing I heard about this news, is that he's currently in critical condition while he's in the hospital in Guadalajara. And my best wishes and definitely thoughts and prayers is to his family and also him, because he's a very well loved kind of man in the Quakes organization. A lot of fans, especially the Mexican kind of fan base, and some Chivas fan base that have followed the Quakes because of Almeida being our head coach, are very close in Benjamin Gallardo, because Gallardo was also the assistant head coach of Matias Almeida when they were at Chivas. So yeah, I definitely wish him a speedy recovery, and hopefully things are going to improve. Now, another Quakes player that has to undergo surgery is Gilbert Fuentes, who actually had to undergo surgery to repair a clavite fracture, which I have no idea what exactly that is. Now, originally when I heard this, I was going to say thoughts and prayers to him too, but then I read that he suffered that injury because of a non-soccer related injury, and that he actually suffered that while he was at home. And although I will still say that I wish him a speedy recovery in terms of the injury that he suffered, I will also want to criticize of why in the world did he decided to do that, to of course suffer that injury, which now require him to have surgery and be out for at least a couple of months. Now, the good thing is, at least Gilbert Fuentes isn't any part of our first team or even our reserve team, and he still kind of is with our affiliates Reno 1860 and trying to develop and potentially get into the Quakes first team. But at the same time, you also want to say that this is definitely not a good move by a youngster that I know a lot of Quakes fans rate him very high, and these are kind of the thing that he just need to learn and trying to not make that mistake again. Because imagine if he is an important piece to our first team, and then he suffered an injury during this whole shelter in place because of something he did at home. That is definitely not a very smart move. And the other thing I will also say is that now that he's going to be out for a couple of months, and unless if the Quakes are going to restart the season, or even in USL they're going to restart their season, he's going to be missed a couple of weeks or even a couple of months, and those are a crucial point where he can be on the pitch and really prove to the Quakes that he deserved to break into the first team and continue his development. So it's a shame that of course this has happened, but again, hopefully he can have a speedy recovery and hope that he learned his lesson to not do this again, because it's not every day you hear players that suffer injuries that is non-soccer related, and when that of course happen, it definitely frustrates a lot of people and also a lot of fans around the team. Now, poor Arriola, who was out with a torn ACL in the preseason, and it looked like this was going to be a season-ending knee injury, although that's what we thought in the beginning of the preseason. Now there's actually rumors saying that, or he actually said that he is not ruling out to return the season after suffering what appeared to be a season-ending knee injury. And I think this is just a classic example of, you got all these players that probably have suffered injury early in the season, whether it's season-ending ones or just some long-term injury. But since we are in this kind of pause because of this whole pandemic that we're in, and that potentially MLS is going to finish this season later than the previous season that the season would be over, then this will also allow a lot of these players to recover and potentially return the season, even though we first thought that potentially he could be out with a season-ending knee injury. Now, one thing I will also say is I hope Paul Arriola doesn't rush his way to return to this DC team. And I know he's very important to that attack for DC United, but the last thing you want is to rush a player back so soon that he could potentially risk of re-injuring his knee, and that could definitely put a big jeopardy in terms of his career. So yeah, as much as I know he is hoping he can return this season, and that I know this season is going to be a little bit longer than previous season. Well, not really longer, but more like if this season is going to be finishing a little bit later than previous season, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden you can say, well, I will be back probably in November or December when the playoffs start, and I'm just going to rush my way so that I can, of course, help my team. So, yeah. But that being said, moving on in terms of the next news and kind of shift a little bit away from the whole COVID-19 situation and talk about the rumors that has happened, because believe it or not, despite the fact that there hasn't really been a lot of rumors that fly out, there is a rumor saying that the Galaxy are once again linking with Independente center back Alan Franco. Now, I know the Galaxy desperately need a center back, and this definitely is a no-brainer move to try to get him for this team. Consider again that is the weakest position that they had and their biggest Achilles heel. The question is that I don't know how are they going to get this move done during this pandemic. I mean, there has been no transfer that has gone on throughout this pandemic, and I'm not even sure how much will Independente are going to ask the Galaxy to pay, because if they ask them to pay a lot of money for a center back, and I know again center back is a huge issue for the Galaxy, are they willing to try to do it? I mean, the Galaxy have always known to be a team that does overpay some players, but most of them are usually on the attacking ends and not actually on the defensive end. So be interesting to see if this move will actually happen, or whether or not if this rumor is continue, or is this just something that is just kind of a random gossip just kind of popped out of nowhere and then eventually died out after a couple of days. Now, Charlotte MLS president Tom Glick says that the club will have its name by June, and I'm really hoping that the new name that Charlotte is gonna come up with their MLS club is not anything that is so generic like what we've seen with some of these expansion teams, like what we've seen from these expansion teams like Nashville SC, Atlanta United. Heck, I even might throw in one of my favorite team, Minnesota United, by putting just such a generic European United SC FC kind of name. I'm really hoping Charlotte would eventually come up with a name that is a little bit more unique to it, and that they don't just name themselves Charlotte SC or Charlotte United. Like, I hope maybe they can. I remember. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember. I think they used to have a USL team that is called the Independence. Although I think that's actually Charlottesville and not really the Charlotte team that play as a USL team a couple years back. But anything that is not United or SC or anything that doesn't sound so generic to a European name, and I will be very happy about it, because it's kind of getting to a little bit of my nerves of the fact that there's just so many teams nowadays, especially some of the expansion team, that doesn't even try to think about what exactly they're going to come up with their name, and just going to name themselves like something United or something FC and SC like that. Now, finally, the final news in terms of this news of the week to talk about is going to be something that's not related to MLS, but just kind of give you guys a little bit of an update for those that also watch some of those big European leagues out there, because some of them are coming back in June, which include the Premier League that is going to be returning in June 17. And I just realized I spelled Premier League wrong, especially the league here. I don't know why I put an R there instead of an E, but it is coming back in June 17. Serie A will also be returning right around that same week and be returning on June 20th, while La Liga will be returning on June 11th. I know the FA Cup will also be continue into the fifth round, and that they actually are going to have the FA Cup final at Wembley Stadium in August 1st. And I think before I actually wrote everything on the board, I actually just kind of received some news that they could potentially actually have fans in attendance during that FA Cup final, which I don't know how exactly that is going to work, but if that is the case, then it's great to see that we can actually have fans back in the stands, because as much as I know, for the last couple of weeks I've been watching the Bundesliga, and I know they've been trying their best to create a little bit of an atmosphere by pumping in fake crowds in the background of the broadcast. It still just doesn't look the same with the way that you see these players playing in empty stadium, and just these whole generic fake crowd. Don't get me wrong, I know they're trying their best to do that, but I just feel like it doesn't sound that good. And if you're going to pump in some generic fake noise, why don't you ask EA or ask Konami that develop PES for instruction of how to create fake crowds? Because some of those fake crowds that they did on the broadcast, it just doesn't sound like the away team would score, and for some reason I hear like a loud roar, which obviously when the away team score, you do still hear some roar or a faint roar from the away fans, but you don't hear like something that is such a loud roar that you feel like the home team have just scored, so, like that. So they really need to ask some of those developer that develop those FIFA games to how to actually put generic crowd into the broadcast so that it sounds much more nice and sounds actually on rhythm. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of all these news. And as usual, if I miss any important news on the board, let me know in the comments below. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.